This is slow, okay?
I need to take a picture of that stuff.
I don't know. It says Hardy Bullock. Well, there's Hardy. Well, just
Louie,
I have to
how's it
get
going?
Hardy Bullock to go. I cannot be sitting there. I got stuff to do.
Hey Lee, how's it going?
Well, there's Hardy. Well, just
Lee,
I have to get Hardy Bullock. So I cannot be sitting there. I got stuff to do.
hey Lee, how's it going?
Hello, what are you doing? Lee, what are you doing? You need to see if you can hear us. Turn that light out, please, up there. Because he can see me. You don't even have a bra.
I don't think you can see you.
That is the microphone. Can you hear him?
Artie, we got a signal?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Lee, it's a little early, so maybe you need to just mute it. What are you doing, mister? Don't chase the squirrels. Maybe you should just mute it and go bye-bye.
Oh, that's all right. I'll just move it, and the camera won't see you.
I'm talking about maybe he doesn't want to. You don't need to sit there for half an hour.
It's only about 15 minutes.
Oh, you mute it. Go bye-bye. He doesn't want to talk to you. He's not ready.
I'll just sit here. I don't care. Just do your thing.
Why don't you carry that plant out for me? I gotta get in the shower. That is not a tomato plant, Lee. Where's my little tomato plant? heck is my little plant? All right.
Let me check the
It's
other
right
shit.
there.
See if there's a link.
Artie, can you hear me? What are you doing? I'm not here. I'm hearing background noise, but I'm not hearing you.
Is that better?
There you go.
Yeah. I had to mute Lee and then I was muted. So yeah, everything's good. How's things with you?
They're going very well, thanks.
All right. How's things in? Yeah, you live in Prosser. Do you live down by the lake? Where do you live?
I live across the street from me is way down to the lake. There's no like houses or anything across the street from me, but it's not right by the lake.
Okay, so you can hit the trails pretty easily.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Let's see how this thing works here. Is that any better?
I'll be right back, David.
Yep. Hey, Mark. Can you hear me? Is that you, Mark?
Hey, David, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I could see you, but now I can't. But I can still hear you. Well,
One more time. All right, David, I guess you can hear me because I can hear you. How's it going?
I can hear you. I could actually hear you a moment ago when you said, David, can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I was just trying to get my the first generation AirPods have this funny lag whenever they go through a reconnect process. So
Oh, got
it takes about a minute and a half to boot these little things up here.
But I can't see you. I could see you earlier, but now I can't see you.
There we
And
go.
now I can see you.
How's it going, Mark?
Good. How are you today, Hardy?
Good.
Foggy in the hood today.
Yeah, it's actually clearing over here at the airport. Seems to be clearing anyway.
Excellent.
So when I came in, it was 50 feet indefinite. It was like you could barely see the taillights in the car in front of you.
Jeez.
Yikes. So this thing is awesome. My little thermos thing.
I know those will keep a beverage hot or cold for days. Hi, Lauren.
Hi, Lauren. Look at you all with your crazy backgrounds.
Do you know which background this is?
Is it from that movie where the little crazy kids?
From The Shining.
The Shining, right? Yeah,
Oh,
right. I have the generic Tahoe home background on mine.
So do I. It's just that I have a kid who's still in school, so he's going to be like coming back and forth,
Got it.
probably asking me questions with his homework still. And then I have a bad window behind me that lets in a lot of light, so it's super dark.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What's up, Mr. Lamb?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you today?
Good, thanks.
Reporting in from the tropics of Sierra Meadow, from the tropics of Olympic Heights.
What?
You want to move to Sierra Meadows, Kobe?
No, I like Prosser quite well.
Prosser Meadows.
Very foggy Prosser today.
It is.
It's going to be a good day today. It's sunny
78.
in Glenshire.
Nice.
Which would you rather see in the corner, my downstairs or some guitars? I saw Mark's guitars. I was sort of like inspired.
Oh yeah, that
Or
one.
do you want to see the gold? I could do the gold record. Well, I can't turn it that far. But
Oh yeah, I'd like to see the gold record.
do you want to see the gold records? Okay, hold on a second.
Did you hang your TV right where your treadmill is at?
Yes. In fact, well, this is like kind of like my loft area up here. So this is like where I do my music and stuff. And so there's
Your record.
Nice.
the gold records and then a few of the guitars. But then but so the treadmill, and the only thing that keeps me on that is being able to watch TV. So I put a
Look at the
TV
records, very cool.
up there.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Thanks. So yeah. So this is my kind of like creative.
Each record is that for an album or a single, like a single hit
Those are all for albums.
album?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. 4 of them are from the US and 2 of them are oddly from New Zealand.
Oh, that's cool.
Don't ask me why Berlin caught on in New Zealand.
Yeah,
But
the Kiwis love the 80s. They still do.
yeah, well, they loved it back in the 80s. That's when it was,
Yeah.
where it was, well, kind of where they were from. But
They loved it back in the 80s.
you know what's funny, David? I turned on the TV on like Sunday. I was just totally canned, and I just literally like turned it on and sat there and froze. And
Yeah.
Top Gun came on.
Ah,
What's so cool about Top Gun, but also about that song, is it's totally timeless. Like it doesn't matter. It applies. It's ubiquitous to everybody. Like my kids can identify with it. And so I mean, I'm sure you have had all kinds of like different ways to talk about that. But anyway, I thought it was pretty cool.
I
the
agree with
Louisiana
you.
song-
I hated the song then, and I still hate it.
You do?
Oh, that's sad.
Oh,
Okay, well, now we know the true story, right?
don't tell Kevin that.
I just find it to be, well, here's the thing about that I always say about Take My Breath Away. If anybody can look at those lyrics and tell me what the hell is happening in that song, I'll give it another chance. I listen to the lyrics, I'm just like, what is going on? This song makes no sense at all. It's not telling a story. It's not doing anything.
It's the movie scene that everyone thinks of when they hear the song, not the actual
agree.
lyrics of the song.
Yeah.
I agree. We've had that conversation many times.
I came in late. I didn't, if you had already discussed it.
My
David,
background,
You can blame it all on Terry, David.
it's from The Shining.
Oh,
like in The
very
Shining.
cool. Very cool.
I need like my twin right here, and we could be like, "Will you be my friend?"
You need to be riding a three-wheeler, a little
I know.
popcorn thing.
I have other backgrounds. I have like a Top Gun fighter jet. I could switch to that one if you feel like that's more airport appropriate.
If you've been
I
at
think we
some
should
of
all
the-
switch to horror movie scenes.
yeah. If you've been to some of the lodges at Squaw, they look just like that hall.
Do they?
Yeah.
Scary. No, I have like the Simpsons background. I have like the interview office, like the interview conference room on the TV show The Office,
Uh-huh.
and like Michael's desk
Oh,
and
pretty cool.
some fun things.
I
I
only
feel
have,
like this one was fun.
can you see my fishies in the background there? Are they hanging out?
Yeah.
Jeez.
That's the only background I got.
I love it.
Let me switch my background. Hold on.
Alrighty, can you hear me? It's Lee.
Yeah, hey, we.
Hey, Lee.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Hey, I borrowed some airport taxiway light bird spikes because the raccoons kept on getting in my bird feature. I'll see if I can show you how they're working. So
Nice one.
there's the wad, a little bit of a half whiskey barrel water feature. And I put bird spikes around the entire bottom of it to keep them from every night pulling out all the plants and pulling out the pump. Little pesky suckers. Lauren, you couldn't find any 1980s fighter jets with the theme song "Take My Breath Away"?
I know. I tried. Do you like this fighter
Yeah.
jet one?
That looks very cool. Really
Is
cool.
it better than the hotel hallway?
Yeah. The
Yeah.
hotel hallway gave me the creeps a little. It looked like a cheap motel carpet.
Yeah, but it was funny once people realized what it was.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I could bring back the Tiger King though. I feel like that one's pretty funny.
Oh, and I like the Ellen and Jennifer and all your Hollywood friends.
Yeah. Hardy needs a background.
I like my plain, stupid, silly office background.
Looks like he's working hard.
Yeah, it does.
Office shot.
I've lost my ability to work from home. I'll call it like 25% effect. There's just way too much going on at my house right now.
Too many distractions. Yeah.
Are your kids like, they don't have, I mean, what are the high schoolers doing? Are they still doing
Finals.
schoolwork? Or are they actually
Yeah.
taking finals?
They're doing finals and schoolwork and projects, and it's like high school has, I think like 8 school days left, and then college applications and dorm selection and meal plan selection and travel plans and return tickets home. Everything is compressed into this 2-week period. So there's just, I have to segregate. I have to come here and work and then go there and do that stuff. Cause like when you start commingling the two, I'm just like, well, I don't know what you're talking about.
That's impressive that they're doing finals.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's insane that they're doing
What's funny
finals.
is my son's generation, the seniors at Truckee High, have all the work and none of the reward. So there's no prom, there's no graduation, there's no senior grad night. It's one of those things where I look back on what we did for graduation and I thought, oh, what a cool time that was. And then this group of kids is
Like nothing.
and
They're great.
I hope they end up with some resilience out of it, right? I hope they end up seeing the world with different eyes, more resilient than they have been.
Their grades don't even count. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like they're doing all this work and taking finals and it doesn't count for anything. Their grades don't count. They're not going to get grades. It's like credit.
And then they've been prepping for 3 years for the ACT and the SATs. And
Can't
then
take
my daughter took them, and the next week they announced that none of those scores mean anything. We're not using them for any of the entrance exams to college.
Why?
Because other kids couldn't take
Other
them.
kids can't take them.
Yeah. It's all
It's
about
just-
like equity, like equitable kind of availability.
Oh my gosh, that's
Yeah.
awful.
That's why the grades don't count, is because the type of like work environment that I'm able to provide for like my son to be able to do his school is not equitable compared to like other families who are, let's say, like medical essential workers, where they're helping their homework like after dinner late at night, or you know, kids who have parents who literally can't help their kids, you know, with their schoolwork. So that's why the grades are kind of
Sean's wife in Reno teaches for a low income school district, and she said it's just chaos. There's families that don't have internet connections. There's even though the school district gave all the students iPads, there's families that have been evicted from their homes. They don't even know where the kids are. And she said they're not teaching one single new thing since the end of February. All they're attempting to do is to maintain that level where they stopped with classroom teaching.
Wow.
I'm impressed. Ethan's still learning like new concepts and things. They're trying to do that, but they know that that's not the same. That's not, you know, an option for a lot of kids. So it's like the kids that can do it, they are, and then the ones that, you know, aren't checking in, there's not much, you know, they can do. So it kind of sucks.
That aim high summer backslide. Can you imagine what kind of backslide some of the kids are going to have going into next fall, if hopefully schools resume as normal?
They're doing like a digital program, and they asked if like Ethan was going to do it. And I was just like, I can't do like digital classroom work anymore. Like the last like 3 months with the school has like traumatized me. Like, I can't handle like 4 hours of online learning. I need a break.
You want to join a cult and homeschool all your brood? No?
I'm not a teacher. Like, it is not a gift that I have at all. My fuse is like so it's 7th grade math. Like, I took high level math, and it's like teaching math is very different than like getting a problem and doing it. You know, it's the art of teaching
Does Kevin come back today, or is he
Huh?
is Kevin back at work today, or is he flying back, traveling,
I have no idea. I think he's driving back today.
driving back today?
Seems like we should have more people here by now.
Lynn was supposed to use the telephone and call in, so has all those numbers. You know, that was on
Yeah,
email.
so you need to enter the meeting ID that I gave you on the email.
Oh, maybe she's on the phone with him.
Oh, I thought he was talking to us, and I was like, but we're all here. We're doing okay.
No one,
Everybody?
no one emailed me and said that they were going to be late or.
Why
not
don't you try,
able to
why don't
make
you
it.
try it one more time? Just hold on just one sec, okay? Hold on just 1 second, okay?
There's Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, crew.
All right. I guess even though it's 9 o'clock, I think we just have to wait a few moments because apparently, I guess Lynn is trying to call in, and
You have to wait till you have 4 anyways, so you don't have a quorum.
Lauren, you have F-18s look like they're going to pass you up here. Better be careful.
I know. I had the hallway from the movie The Shining, and it scared people, so I had to.
I
had to
love
change
that.
it. I know.
I love that. I want it.
I mean, I'll switch. I'm gonna switch it back.
We're just going to assume that you're at a lodge in Squaw Valley.
Okay, I'm gonna read some numbers off to you, Lynn. You tell me if you think they're right.
Lauren's back.
Oh.
Have you been, Joe? What's going on?
Spent 3 weeks in Atlanta. Just got back Sunday,
Whoa.
and that was a road trip for us for a lot of reasons.
Wow, long drive.
Oh my gosh, it's my wife and I just decided that any state that starts with the letter N is boring. Nevada, Nebraska.
What about New Hampshire?
Well, we didn't go through there, so
Yeah.
maybe I can end that one then.
So Joe, you didn't want to expose your grandbaby to COVID on airplanes, so you decided to drive?
You know, that's a great question, Mark. And the reason why we drove is because the Georgia Aquarium where my daughter works, their policy was is if you fly, you had to quarantine for 5 days. But if you drive, then you're kind of self-quarantining. And so we felt like, well, that's the reason why we're going, is to kind of provide some short-term daycare help to our daughter and my son-in-law, who all went back to work at the same time and didn't have daycare. So we got in the truck and went to Atlanta.
Well, awesome. Well, it sounds like kind of a fun adventure.
Yeah, it was great to see him and a great visit, but I don't recommend that car trip.
Yeah, that's a long one.
That's a good grandparent right there, driving across the country. Shoot.
Did you make it in 3 days?
Yeah.
How was traffic?
You know, there were stretches in Nebraska on Highway 80 where there was nobody as far as the eye could see. But on our trip back, there was a lot more people on the road. So we kind of caught it just as the country started to open up.
Did you go the central route on the way there and then return on the southern route, like through Texas and New Mexico?
Yeah, great question. We talked about doing that, Mark, but we ended up just going back and forth 80. We felt like if we saw it from the other side of the road, the view would be different.
That's awesome.
It really wasn't.
Phil's family's coming up in July and they're driving up from Phoenix, which should be fun. But then they're flying back. We're like, if you want to come visit, you're going to have to drive up and then you could fly back home.
That's a good deal.
Yeah.
So they're
I
just
tell
a rental car?
Driving the country is, I think that's why God invented airplanes.
Yeah.
Hey, Mr. Diamond, I'm just waiting to see if Lynn can dial in, and we'll give whatever variance in the time you want to allow for that, because we have a quorum now, so you can.
Yeah. I figure we'll maybe, is she trying to dial in right now?
Yeah,
There she is.
I think we have her down here. If I recognize that number, I believe that's Lynn's number.
Okay.
Yeah, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yep.
Okay, great.
Am I going to be able to hear other people?
Can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Then you're good.
Pardon me? Okay.
If you can hear one of us, you can hear all of us. Okay, then let's get the let's start the meeting. I'm not sure where Stacy is, or maybe she'll be joining us in a bit. But yeah, so let's call this ACAT meeting to order for June 2nd, 2020. Let's see, here are the I think we'll waive the Pledge of Allegiance and go right to the roll call.
Okay. Chair Diamond,
Here.
Member Golden,
Here.
Member Rolfe,
Here.
Member Lorenz,
Here.
Member Larson,
Here?
and Member Caldwell.
Okay, do we have any special orders of business? Nobody? Okay. The public comment period, we have a phone number, text message for at 530-205-8603 for anybody that wants to send public comment. Is it, David, just for clarification, it has to be a text message? They can't email or call you, or how does that work?
Well, so far we've only done text, as well as email. So,
okay, is it possible for anybody to call you? Like, could they send you a text message and say, I want to call you and give you public comment, but I don't want to text the whole thing?
I'm sure we could pull that off.
Okay, just so we can just have that option for people that are, I mean, I found like last week during the board meeting, by the time I finished my text, they were on to the next topic. So I missed the opportunity. So, but again, that number is 530-205-8603. All right, moving on to the, or actually, do we have any public comment?
We have no public comment.
Okay, awesome. So going on to item G, consent items. The minutes from the May 5th meeting. Has everybody read them, and do I get a motion to approve?
Yes.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of May 5th, 2020.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, roll call.
I'll second that, David.
Okay, we have a second. Roll call. Hardy, do we have to have a roll call vote to approve the minutes?
Oh, yeah, sorry. You triggered something. Member Diamond,
Yes.
Member Golden,
Yes.
Member Rolfe,
Yes.
Member Lorenz,
Aye.
Member Larson.
Yes?
Thank you.
All right, moving on to H, to the emergency landing map. We basically have what we're calling a final candidate for that map, which has been distributed to ACAT. And at this point, the subcommittee would like the rest of ACAT to look at it and let us know if you have any concerns about us presenting this to the board for final approval and production. So would we like to go in the order of, what is our order here? Of folks, I don't know what our order is here.
You
Pick one.
You can be, if you want to write it down, because I'm calling the roll call vote, maybe we could organize it. Chair Diamond, Member Golden, Member Rolfe, Member Lorenz, Member Larson, in that order.
Okay.
I will.
Okay. All right. So I have I have no comments on it. I think that staff did a fantastic job on this. This was, I feel like we met the goal for this, and I'm good with it as it is. So I'm sorry, Hardy, who was next on there?
That would be Member Golden.
Lee? What do you
Yes,
think?
thank you. I looked at it in great detail last night. Excellent work by everybody. And I would move to send it over to the board for their review and possible approval. Good work by everybody.
Thank you, Lee.
Member Rolfe?
It looks great to me.
Member Lorenz?
You know, I'm really proud of that work, and just can't thank staff enough for really working hard to put it in the shape that it's in. And David, thanks very much for leading this one. I think it's fantastic. So I would second Member Golden's motion.
Aye. Stacy. Member Caldwell?
Hi, I just came in, so I probably won't be voting on whatever you're talking about. I apologize.
Okay.
We're talking about the emergency landing map. If you had a chance to look at that and whether or not you have any concerns about it before we present it to the board for approval and production.
No, I think it's really exciting work. I'm very impressed. I hope that you and the staff are also happy with what they've pulled together.
Yeah, we are. I think for those of us that were on the ad hoc, it took a while, but I think that it's in good shape, and I think it will help on many levels. Member Larson, are you there?
Yes, it's a delightful little document, and as I look at it, it's really very helpful. I had two comments that I will bring up at this point. One, I did not anywhere in the backup material did I see anything that would alert the people on the ground that these emergency landing sites are near them. I think that was a flaw, because I think people who live nearby or the school bus barn and all that stuff, they need to know that they've been designated as in their general area a emergency landing site. So I think that was a glaring absence. The other piece of this is the disclaimer, and I talked with Hardy about this yesterday, the disclaimer at the bottom that says this guide shall not be used, blah, blah, blah. The first 3 times I looked at this, I just kind of didn't even bother to I skipped over it, frankly. And so my recommendation is that disclaimer be a big, make it so that somebody's going to see it. To have it's almost buried. So those are my 2 comments: the concern about notification of people who live near these potential landing sites, and the disclaimer.
Okay, thank you. Did you have on the disclaimer? The disclaimer, just for the record, was cleared through the legal counsel for the airport, so that they have seen that.
That wasn't the issue. That wasn't the issue. The issue was that it needs to be a lot bigger print. Bold it, put a star by it, anything, so that people look at that and say, oh, and by the way, this isn't official. I think there's nothing that would draw my attention to say this isn't an official, recommendation, a suggestion. So I think that really needs to be emphasized.
Okay.
And to notify people on the ground.
We've got a couple of clerical kind of punctuation, spelling, and pieces we're going to correct that Mark Lamb worked on. And then I've got some cell padding kind of layout issues and font kind of style point and size correction. So this document isn't the final document, but I think we'll have the final document by the end of the week. So I think both the points are valid, and we can I think they're pretty minor corrections. If ACAT wants to approve it as approved with modifications, I think from here we can get you the final document so you can present it to the board at the next meeting.
Okay, so but on those 2 points, the disclaimer is a relatively minor concern. The going to people on the ground and telling them about this, I believe, is not a minor concern. That's a significant effort. And I think I'm a little bit confused about the value of it, Lynn, only in that the whole point of the areas that were chosen to move pilots in distress away from populated areas into regions where presumably it's flat, meaning that there are no houses, so that they could possibly land their disabled aircraft. Was there a region on the map where you felt that we were conflicting with residences?
No, it wasn't that at all. What I saw was the golf course. Let me go back here. The golf course. Now, yeah, if you're going to have an off-site landing and you're going to try to land on the golf course, you may not have. That might not be, you know, the option that you're going to get. And so there are homes along the golf course. There's a school bus barn in the area. I'm only saying there can be a lot of, you know, issues that such as wind, blah blah, and so I think it's a courtesy, and it's also important to let these people know that they are in a potential off-site landing location, and to not do that, I think we're not doing our job. So that's I really want some guarantee that we're not going to just go out and talk to those people. We're going to talk to them and send them notifications so that they know. I think to not let them know is irresponsible.
Okay. All right. Point taken. Who on the golf course, just out of curiosity, who would we notify? The golfers? Or who would you think that we should contact?
Maybe Parks and Recreation.
So
I don't know, but that would be my first guess.
Okay.
Lynn, when I was first trying to scope out these zones and do some drone photography, I did reach out to the director of our Parks and Rec. Can't remember his name right now, to let him know that the golf course has been designated as the emergency landing zone, as well as the owner of the landfill, the operator of the landfill, and the county reached out to. So those two folks, those two zones have been notified at least.
And was it just because I wasn't around when this all happened, but when the airport purchased the golf course, wasn't that part of the reason for having that land was in case it was needed for emergency?
Yeah. But one thing too, I'll mention, the impact from aircraft overflight and the probability of having an off-airport landing scenario with an aircraft is outlined in the club. And really that Truckee-Tahoe Airport Land Use Commission designates those zones with the relative risk and associated with aircraft overflight. So that's kind of and it's probably it's not really part of this discussion, but it kind of is, just because that function of alerting people to the risk and the hazard associated with aircraft operations near an airport really reside with the Truckee-Tahoe Airport Land Use Commission. That's why it's developed. That's why airports have land use commissions, so that people within those areas have a specified way to measure the risk. And so I'll say I agree with Lynn's philosophy. I think there's more we could do to notify folks, but really that, as it's prescribed in the club, is a pretty detailed type of description of what that risk is. And it goes through A, B, C, D, E zones and what the probability of having an aircraft incident within that zone is. And so I would caution us in doing ad hoc work around that and going into a community member and saying, hey, I just want to let you know, there could be an aircraft that's going to land on the golf course. That to me is not really necessarily, I don't think that's the right delivery method. I think the club is really the right delivery method. And honestly, it almost crosses boundaries a little bit with the real estate guide project because it's essentially a land use question. So if you want to give us another, and I hate to use the word month, but if you want to give us until the next meeting to kind of parse out how we could use the club to make notifications of things relative to this map. I don't think it should hold up the publication of the map or the working with the board, but I do think Lynn's onto something, and maybe we can cross paths with the real estate ad hoc group, and then I can show you some exhibits from the club that will help us understand this.
As a golfer, a lot of rules and like little notes you find on scorecards, you know what I mean? So if we pursue it further as far as trying to find ways to notify people, homeowners, participants that play golf on the golf course, that is a pretty, minimal thing. The rec district has to print golf cards, scorecards every year. Maybe they can add a simple line, to the scorecard. They already have, a list of points about the course.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think we just want to be careful about how we message it, because there's a lot of pieces of impact from the airport that we would start describing. And those could be communities that are affected by noise, communities that are affected by light emissions and sound. And so I think we need to think through that notification process more. But my takeaway is we don't have to hold this document up for that. I think we could honor what Lynn's saying, and staff can help ACAT get there with an explanation of this at the next meeting.
Okay, so then what do we are on the action? We're looking for a motion to approve the map with the amendment that, or with the change that the disclaimer be more prevalent, and that the communities surrounding the landing zones, for whatever ones they are there, are notified that we are publishing the map. Is that correct? Is that good for you, Lynn?
Yes.
Okay.
But I want some guarantee that this is going to happen. So I'll move approval that for this document with the changes that you have indicated.
Okay. Could I add one piece to your motion? Can you just add as modified by staff, just so we can correct some of the pieces that Mark Lamb has identified? And there's a couple things that I see in it that need modification as well.
Okay, so the motion then is that we approve the emergency landing map with the increase in visibility of the disclaimer, notification of affected communities, and changes identified by staff.
Yes.
Do we have a second on that?
I have a question.
Yeah.
And a comment, I guess. So the motion, so the next step is the board is going to ultimately approve or discuss the map,
right?
What we're doing, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And by making these changes and having ACAT review it again next month, that's delaying that process to the board, correct?
That's correct.
I don't think it needs to. This is just my opinion.
Yeah, that's only if you want to review the changes one more time. You can approve this with these changes, and then when it's changed in the next week or two, we present that version to the board at the June meeting.
I think the changes are going to be pretty minimal, and just
yeah,
a bit of some of the layout and increasing the disclaimer.
So thank you for that. So my concern is that we've been working on this for a while, and I would feel pretty bad as a pilot if we were delaying publication of this to the pilot community, which is a huge safety consideration, and delaying that to the board to have them review and approve it so that we get the information out to pilots. I would be against slowing the process down for the sake of kind of the notification. I get what you're saying, Lynn, but at the end of the day, let's get this information out to pilots, because pilots need this for safety reasons.
Okay.
Hardy, this is Lee. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
David, I just had one question on this. Has this proposed maps been looked at by our legal counsel representing the airport?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
have.
so they're good with it?
Yeah, the only suggestion they had after looking at it was adding one extra line to it, which is on there now in the disclaimer that says that the airport doesn't recommend or prefer any of the zones. Other than that, I thought it was fine.
Excellent. Thank
Okay.
you.
David, I have a question, and I guess I'm not clear on who it was. Was it Ms. Joe? Is that, I don't remember her name. I'm not quite sure where I was going with that. I need a clarification. Was it send it off to the board right now with the little changes we've made, or was there some suggestion that you bring it back to ACAT again? And I don't think we need to do that, but I'm not quite sure what he was asking. Can I get some clarification on that?
Hi, Lynn. I think what Joe's concern was if we then go into the process of amending the map as discussed or identified in the motion, do we now delay being able to take it to the board until ACAT can officially see it again in 1 month's time? Or can ACAT accept the changes, the changes with that basically sight unseen when the changes are completed, and then take that to the board without ACAT having to see the map again?
Okay, I agree. Let's not hold it up, and we just have to trust. And if the board either likes it or they don't, that's the way it is.
Right. So we have the motions out. Do we need a read back on the motion, or do we have a second on the motion?
We need a second.
I realize that, but I was asking, does anybody need a read back of that before we move? Or we know?
I could read it again. You want to motion to approve the emergency landing map with the following amendments: changes to the disclaimer to be a larger font or more prevalent, formatting changes to be made by staff, as well as some type of notification for the community that's affected around the landing zones. That's what was motioned.
Okay. And Laura, just officially, did you get the motion originally from Lynn, or was that a motion from me?
Well, the first motion was just to motion to approve it as it's been submitted, and that was done by Joe and Lee. But with the changes, we need a new motions because it superseded the first motion.
That was the motion I made.
Yeah, so Lynn made this motion. We need a second to this motion.
I second this motion. Do we have any public comment on this, David?
No public comment.
Okay, roll call vote. Hardy?
Member Chair Diamond?
Yes.
Member Golden?
Yes.
Oh, your squares moved. You guys are throwing me here. Member Rolfe?
Aye.
Member Lorenz?
Aye.
Member Caldwell? Member Larson?
Yes.
All right, great. So, yes,
David,
Lynn?
could I make a request before we move on?
Sure.
When there's a motion on the floor, we have to ask for a second and then we can have discussion. But without that second, we're kind of putting the cart before the horse. And then we can always vote no. We can say, the motion died for lack of vote. But could we get that second so that we have it?
I gave the second. I was the second, Lynn. I seconded the motion.
Not the one I made.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, we'll clean this up later. Let's not waste time on it now.
Oh, there's nothing to clean up, Lynn. You made the
No.
motion, and I seconded it, and then we took a vote, and it was unanimously passed.
Okay, let's drop this right now because I wasn't clear. All right.
All right.
One thing I do want to remind us on ministerial kind of task is that we're all functioning to the best of our ability on this Zoom piece, and I'm hoping we can get back together soon but there is a level of patience and a level of just miscommunication that is inherent with this method. So I just want to remind everybody and I hold myself to that. I'll be patient and we all try. We'll do our best. And thank you for getting together on this format.
All right, cool. Yeah, so item H3, the Safe Haven project. This was another document that was in with the ACAT stuff, the proposal for the policy on that. And if we have ACAT's approval on that policy, then Mark and we'll go forward with the logistics of how we actually set the thing up. So did everybody have a chance to read that? And I'm just going to say I've read it and I approve it as it is. And let's go to Lee Golden and ask Lee what he thinks.
Same goes here, David. Thank you. I read it and I would move to approve it as written.
Okay, Member Rolfe.
Yes, I agree with the previous. I've read it and I approve it and ready to move forward.
Okay, and Stacy.
Ditto.
And Lynn.
I had a couple questions about it, and I'm sorry to take up the time to do that. But are we talking about we're going to submit this to the board for the board to establish a policy regarding this project? Is that the idea?
No, Lynn, that is the policy for this program. And so if ACAT approves this, then we will basically draft up the logistics of how the program will work. And then we will take that to the board for the board's final approval.
Okay, all right. So my concern, I had two concerns. Well, actually, yes, two. One is when we establish this, does the airport have any liability for vetting either the pilots or the homeowner? And what's the airport's, once it becomes a policy, does it not become a airport supported, and what's their liability?
We did have the policy that you've read in your ACAT materials has been approved by Airport's legal counsel. We did have a discussion about the airport's liability in it with regard to the entirety of the policy, not just the specifics of hosting. And the language that's in there that does reference the airport's liability was provided by legal counsel, and they're satisfied with that. Was there something specific in there that you think that doesn't cover us, or that might be wrong or too weak? Or
well, as you know, I get confused easily, so I really I just wanted to make sure that the airport does not have liability for a pilot comes and stays at my house, beats me up, and I probably deserved it, but and that the airport has no responsibility to me for suggesting that this pilot be.
Yeah, I mean,
or the other way around.
Yeah,
or the other way around.
Well, I would hate to think that you would beat up a pilot who was in distress with you. But if you're influenced by Lauren's background pattern, I don't know. Who knows what happens in lodging situations? But just so you know, Lynn, I actually, when I saw the draft, I actually provided some alternate, more specific to that situation language for the proposal. But for whatever reason, legal counsel decided to provide what we had, and I'm not an attorney, so I'm not going to argue with it. But I did want you to know that specific issue was definitely brought up and discussed, and they provided what they felt was relevant.
Okay.
I wanted to mention one process piece. This policy is a standard policy instruction, so that's basically it's guidance by the general manager to the staff. So it doesn't actually require board approval. That's just handled as a direction from the general manager. So at the ACAT report, when you put this on your ACAT report and present it to the board certainly is welcome to give whatever insight they may have on it, but it's a policy instruction. So that's Kevin Smith's direction to staff, essentially how it works. And then a policy is derived from the board. So when we put it on the ACAT agenda, it will be an informational guidance item.
Okay. So before we look for a motion, did anybody else have any other questions based on that conversation or concerns?
I have a question, I guess, for Hardy and for Mark. So that in the abstract, and maybe I'm not reading this right, but in the second paragraph of the abstract, it says the Safe Haven Initiative works in concert with other pilot passenger outreach programs. Outreach coordinator works closely with the operations team to develop awareness of behaviors that conflict with good aeronautical decision making. And the outreach coordinator assists pilots and passengers by providing local weather knowledge, et cetera, et cetera. That reads, so is the outreach coordinator, I mean, is that their role to kind of make sure that he or she is seeing good behaviors at the airport?
I'll let Mark address that, but my understanding of it, just in case we're not in agreement with what's on the paper, Mark, or whether I'm misunderstanding it, is that what they're saying is that part of Mark's duties is already to identify situations which might not be safe. And so if a pilot is about to take off into weather that looks questionable and Mark witnesses this, that he might go out to the ramp and say, are you sure you want to do this? So I think that this is what they mean by that this is part of that. And then in addition, because it's a formalized program, we can promote it and make it available so that pilots can proactively learn about this, but that it's not separate from Mark's duties. Mark, am I understanding the document correctly?
Yes, I think you phrased that very appropriately.
All right. And Joe, does that answer that question?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for that. Appreciate it.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve that that policy as it is?
I'll move it.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Right. Okay, Kat will second, and then we'll do a roll call vote on that.
Chair Diamond?
Yes.
Member Golden?
Yes.
Member Rolfe?
Aye.
Member Lorenz?
Aye.
Member Caldwell?
Aye.
Member Larson?
Yes.
All right, great. Thanks, everybody. Then item H4, the real estate guide review. This again, just to where we're at with this is that the subcommittee, which is Lynn, Stacy, and myself, have drafted up initial content for this that we want ACAT to, we were basically looking for your blessing and approval on it. It's important to note that this is step one. Step two will be that we take that content and work with a designer to actually put the page together. And in the process of doing that, some of this content might be edited for space or for positioning or for whatever, but the gist of it will not change. So if you approve it now, we are not going to make substantive changes to the document that would be outside the scope of your approval. So what we're looking at is whether everybody has had a chance to read that content, and then just go through and see if we have any comments or questions about it. I'm good with it. And Lee, what do you think?
I read it and I'm good with it. Thank you. Good job on that, everybody involved.
Thanks, Lee. And Kat, what do you think?
I did have, I had some questions about one part. I'm trying to find it now. It's the sentence, shoot. Noise reduction procedures for pilots are taken seriously and investments have been made to make some more commonly used aircraft quieter. I don't think that was it. Shoot. There was one part that I felt like gave sort of unrealistic hope for prospective buyers that the airport was going to try to make the noise impact less. And I guess I feel like, I'm sorry, I can't find it right now. I saw it this morning. Should have highlighted it.
I have a hard time finding it too. Yeah.
Remember what it, any keywords?
Well, maybe it was that investments have been made to make some more commonly used aircraft quieter. I guess, and somehow I feel like that raises some sort of expectation that, for instance, there's a airplane that flies over my house pretty commonly that is very loud. And I don't want that, like, new homeowners to have this expectation that the airport, if they complain enough, that they're going to make sure that you're not going to have that noise in your backyard anymore. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I'm kind of smiling about this because that one sentence is like the one point of a little bit of controversy between the three of us on that. Originally, I was specific about to the tow planes and to the jump planes,
right?
Because that's where we had actually made the and then Stacy and Lynn didn't like the detail of that, and I was trying to figure out how to say, like, how to sort of reference those two investments without, because it's like I couldn't say commercial aircraft if I couldn't say the tow planes or the training aircraft or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how to say it, but on the other hand, I kind of felt like it was unfair to the airport, especially to ACAT, because ACAT, in fact, was the approval for that supercharger for the jump plane, that we don't reference that those investments have been made, and it's the jump plane, the tow gliders, and the diesel 172, which is used for training, that the board approved. I didn't know how to reference all that, and I agree with you. I don't want to make it seem like if an airplane starts getting used a lot, that the airport is going to then make investments in making that aircraft quieter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I mean, I think we should celebrate the investments we have made, but I also feel like the average Truckee resident or home buyer is not so granular in their knowledge of exactly what has happened, what we've done, and how important that is. And is it our responsibility to make them aware of that? And if we do, does it raise expectations for the future? And just always going back to the fact that annoyance is so subjective.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand that, yeah, it's hard to craft a sentence that conveys exactly what you want to convey in this instance.
Right. Would you feel that we should just not mention those investments at all? Is that cleaner, or is that unfair to the airport, or what are you thinking on that? Should we try to figure it out, or should we just X that entire?
I feel like we should try to figure it out. I don't know. I mean, what do other people think about that? I guess it comes down to, what kind of message we want to send, and how much, how detailed do we want to be? What's our audience here, and how educated do they want to be?
All right. Well,
anybody else have thoughts about it, or
let's go. Let's continue on with Joe and just see if Joe has any comments on that or anything else. We'll go back and maybe circle back at the end.
Sure.
Of this. Joe,
yeah, thanks. So yeah, I think I agree with Kat, and I appreciate the work you guys have done on it. I've always kind of felt like, so backing up a little bit, and this is more high level about this resource, I guess. And I'm sorry if this is kind of late, if this is a late kind of opinion on my part, but I'm conflicted a little bit because I agree that more information is better, and being transparent in what is going on at the airport, I totally get. And so, I went through my purchase documents when we moved here 3 years ago or so, and there are disclosure statements talking about all the types of noise and activities around the city of Truckee that you kind of sign off on in it, whether it's trains, the airport, or, the cement factory that's down the road. I mean, that kind of thing. And so I feel like that there's a decent amount of disclosure already without necessarily kind of polluting the well. And what I mean by that is again, I'm sensitive that we don't want to discourage folks from making that buying decision, but at the same time, I understand that we want to make sure that folks who move here aren't surprised by the noise of airplanes flying over. So I'm not opposed to the document, so don't get me wrong with that. But I'm just wondering, how detailed and how granular, that's a great word, do we want to be with this document? And that's I'll leave it at that.
Okay, Stacy, what do you think?
As part of the ad hoc committee, we've kind of been through the whole process of how realistic is it to use this as a real estate guide, if you will, at the point of sales, and will a real estate agent really adopt it in their process, to more of a friendly introduction to the airport with an acknowledgement that there are noise impacts, but there's also positive community impacts. And so as it took that turn, it felt a little more palatable for me to see it in a real way in our community, the pathway into our community for uses, not just at the point of sale, but pre-sale and post-sale. To just say, here's the airport, here's the flight paths, here's the governing board, the staff, and the volunteer advisory that are dedicated to ensuring that it is a good neighbor. It does have these impacts that we are aware of, and you should be too. Here's how to deal with them and get involved. And here's the community impacts. And so to me, that's where it kind of took a turn to be, I think, a little more realistic as a functioning document that could be helpful in the community and helpful in the buyer's process. And I think Lynn has been a good, I don't know if the word is bellwether, but she really has, she's expressed some buyer's remorse in not knowing. And so I feel like that's been a bit of a drumbeat for us of like, well, how do you kind of proactively communicate who you are and kind of own it, so that new community members, as well as others, understand the process of how to get involved with the whole institution itself. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that to me is where I kind of landed and felt really good about creating something that's more of a, here's your neighborhood airport.
Okay. And Lynn, are you there?
I'm here. Thank you, Joe and Kat, for your comments, because, as being really close to this, sometimes I don't see what others see. And so I have to agree that my wish would be at this point that we say something in that paragraph that says something to the effect that airport staff, in coordination with community volunteers, create and manage projects to reduce the airport's impact on the community. End of sentence. Now, you could elaborate on that to say that we take the airport's impact on the community seriously and make every effort to reduce impacts or whatever. I have to agree with Kat. I'm not. I guess I didn't see it before, but I would like to not have it, the noise thing just glare at me. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. Anyway. So I would do something a little differently with because it said noise reduction procedures for pilots are taken seriously and investments have been made. Well, I know that we've spent thousands and thousands of dollars on tracking and all kinds of stuff. And we don't want to tell them we've done all that because it's still noise. So I would do something different there. That's all I'm saying. Not to emphasize the noise.
Okay. All right. If I could just comment on some of the stuff, I think that, I'm biased because I mean, I'm part of the document, right? So I kind of I see that perspective from it. But when as a writer, when I'm doing something, I think about not only just what I'm writing, but like what's the meaning and the goal behind the paragraph or the sentence that I'm writing. Right? It's like you start with a goal. I need to say something, and then you craft the words to say it. In that paragraph, to me, what I was trying to say was that it's basically what we've always said is that we can think of no other airport, or we know of no other airport in the United States that has done more proactively to try to reduce its impact on the surrounding community. The problem with that statement is that it sounds like marketing. It's inviting people to disagree and to debate. And I think we felt as the ad hoc committee that it was important for us to stick to facts on this and to avoid hyperbole as much as possible. It was a difficult balance because if you remember in the initial draft of this, which I wrote, which was much, much larger, it was much scarier too. It went into more detail about things that had gone on in the airport and recommendations of asking potential neighbors if aircraft noise bothers them, or asking the airport, have there been complaints in my prospective neighborhood? It went much, much deeper into all of this. So when we backtracked on all that, and we get here, I kind of see this paragraph as like the last hold on to talk about noise abatement procedures and talk about the fact that this is not one of the nation's airports that say, you know what, you move next to an airport, deal with it. Because many airports do have that attitude where it's like the airport was here before you were here, so there's nothing, move if you don't like it. And the Truckee Airport is absolutely not of that perspective, which is, I think, one of the reasons we all love it. And I feel like if we take that paragraph and start to really narrow it down and take out some of the evidence, like the investments, that we'd kind of do the airport's efforts a disservice by glossing over them and just talking about like, this is all important to us. And to me as a reader, if somebody's telling me something's important to them, I kind of like show me at least a sentence or two evidence of what you're talking about. Why, like, what have you done to address this? Or what have you, how do you back up that statement that we take this seriously, or that we manage projects to reduce the airport's impact on the community? To me, as a lead sentence of a paragraph, that just begs a follow-up, which is like, as such as what? And this, I think, is where we had some problem defining what we wanted to say there. I guess the question I would have for ACAT would be that if the document went out as it is this a bad thing? Or can we, if we can't think of a better way of saying that, is there something else we could say there?
You know what I would suggest, Dave, in looking through this, I'm sorry, maybe I'm out of turn. Sorry, guys. But we say noise reduction procedures for pilots are taken seriously. I think I'd delete that last sentence in that paragraph and bring up the sentence in the flight paths paragraph where it says the airport is making investments in equipment. Maybe bring that up to that area. That way we get out of the business of kind of investing in quieter aircraft and really talk about ADS-B basically, which I think is a far better investment in terms of noise abatement.
Yeah, the only thing is that just that flight pass thing is just it's an inset box for the map. It's in a different portion of the map, which is why there might be it might feel like there's a little bit of an overlap. It's
Okay.
yeah.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
I do want to just caution us on wordsmithing, because I think that the draft has a few more iterations if the direction of ACAT is to move forward with this. I mean, I think that the guidance that I'm looking for is this still relevant and worthy of our time and resources to produce? And if so, then I think with Kat's direction and Joe's direction, David and Lynn, I think we can get to the acknowledgement of investments that have been made on noise abatement without getting into the nitty gritty or implying anything that would increase expectations, to Kat's point. So I think we can get there with the language in that direction. But more importantly, I feel like we need our ACAT's support, that because it has kind of changed from, a point of sale, kind of caution to the buyer product, and to more of a, an acknowledgement of who the airport is and how it operates and how it manages its negative and positive impacts in some way. So to me, that's the direction we're looking for, and we can get into the details on, because once you start putting stuff onto the design format, David, as you know, you start to realize, okay, we got to get more succinct in this area and less wordy, and we need, so we can bring it back for that kind of refinement, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really well said, Stacy. Thanks very much for that. And as ever, you always kind of do a great job with that. I always kind of love how you put things together. I think I was kind of reacting to Kat's earlier comment, about the investment in the aircraft and wanting to kind of have some resolution there. And that just to me looked like kind of an easy way to clean that up a little bit. But
and I noted that as well. So I think that's a good solution. Didn't mean to derail that one.
No, it didn't feel that way at all. I just kind of, you're right. As I'm looking for words, I'm kind of an old timey wordsmither. And so I kind of default to that. So thanks for keeping us at the right level.
Right.
Can I jump in here for a minute, Dave?
Go for it.
I was going to say, as I'm listening to the discussion, your title, Noise and Environmental Impact. There's a way to combine that paragraph. I go Joe, the wordsmithing thing. The way to perhaps to think about that is to take that noise out of the environment and take noise out, and then something to the effect that airport staff, blah, blah, and environmental studies are really routinely conducted as part of the airport's construction, planning, noise reduction, and aeronautic initiatives. Just kind of put it in the paragraph, including environmental impact, and not have the noise be a neon sign flashing at us. I think you could combine that whole thing and say environmental impact, and here are the things that impact us. So just a thought.
Okay. Lee, did you have any comments on this?
Well, I had a question in regards to this. The document as it's presently drafted and it's on paper, has this been presented to some of the real estate sales representatives? And any comment from them if it has?
It will be presented as soon as it passes ACAT. So that would be the next step, but we've not, so far this has just been the ad hoc committee. We take it now to ACAT to see if we have ACAT support to take it move forward. And then we will take it to real estate, and then we will take it to design and board approval and that whole thing.
Now, the disclosures that are currently on real estate transactions regarding the presence of the airport, are the affected properties basically what we see in the club? in the inside of that area? That's just a question. I think Hardy could probably answer that.
Yeah. So essentially, again, that's what the club's function is to produce that unified response to property development, densities, zoning, all that stuff.
So based on that, Glenshire out here isn't under the auspice of the club, correct me if I'm wrong. So does that mean that there is no disclosure on any real estate legal paperwork stating that the airport exists?
It's very complicated. So once you get past the influence area, which is 10,000 feet past the last demarcation of an active runway, you get outside that club zone influence area, and you get into a different type of notification. And sometimes there's aviation or navigation easements that are broad placements of aeronautical easements overneath or over the top of a property that's underneath a flight path. And so it goes kind of beyond the scope
the instrument approach, sure.
Yeah. Sorry, it gets really complicated.
And I did get it out of that one paragraph, what the airport has done, and the 3 aircraft immediately came to mind. And, it's very admirable what the airport has done to try to mitigate the noise from those, i.e. commonly used aircraft. But that's getting, we're kind of splitting hairs with that, but, the airport's done a tremendous amount to try to mitigate this problem. And I think prospective buyers, they need to know the airport's here, but they also need to know that, if they have questions, that the airport has done a tremendous amount of work and spent a tremendous amount of resource trying to make it better for everybody. It is unprecedented. And my hat's off to everybody who's been involved with that. It's a monumental mountain to climb, and everybody's done a really good job with
it. I would not only agree with you, Lee, but I would offer that even the production of something like this is evidence of the airport's concern for people. And that's,
we care.
Yeah, it was one of the things for me like when we talked about it in the subcommittee is that I wanted something that was an initial handshake to say, just so you know, we're here, and here's what you can expect from us, and here's how you reach us, and here's how you participate with us, without it making it, because like we said before, it's like I live in Prosser, basically right under the flight path to Truck 4. And as I said to others, including Mary Hetherington, whom I'm working on something with on a board working group, I hear the aircraft, but they don't bother me at all. I don't think they're super loud. They don't annoy me, maybe because I'm a pilot, or maybe because I hear mini bikes and chainsaws on my street that are much louder and go on for much longer than the sound of an aircraft. But I totally recognize that there are some people who are very, very sensitive to aircraft sound. And like Stacy, I was impacted when we first talked about this, when we were actually in the meeting at the airport physically, where I remember Lynn saying, I wish I had a document like this when I bought my house. And I had to imagine that she's not the only one who felt that way. I mean, when I bought my house, I saw the disclaimer and everything, and I was thinking like, yeah, well, the fact that I'm near an airport is a good thing for me. I'm super happy about that. But to me, I know that other people, if people are not sensitive to aircraft noise, they might say, oh, that's great. Who cares? It's not an issue for me. I just wanted to make sure that for people who are very, very sensitive to something like that, that they have a friendly introduction to the airport where they might look at, well, maybe a property in this other part of Truckee is actually better for me than a property here. Or at the very least, so that they go into it with no buyer's remorse that a cloudy, they bought their house. Every time they look at their house, it's a sunny, beautiful day. And then they move into their house, and then winter comes and the skies are cloudy and people are using the Truck 4 departure, and they're all of a sudden thinking, what's happening over my house? Why am I hearing not even understanding what's going on, whether or not it's a disturbance to them. So this was kind of that for me.
So David, I'll just jump in here with a quick comment on that. I have to tell you that your buyer's remorse, I know you refer to my chagrin about the whole thing, and it really had very little to do with people coming in and going out. It had to do with touch and goes, and I think we kind of addressed that. But the touch and goes that was what really sent me over the edge. Just so you know.
Right. And that would be, in theory, that would be something that would be addressed as we draw the common flight paths on the map. To understand, like, that's the flight pattern for this runway. Here's the typical approach from the Bay Area. Here's the typical approach from Reno, kinds of things. I mean, and granted, you don't, especially as a non-aviator, you don't really understand what any of that means, other than it's maybe, if I look at this, if I'm thinking I'm going to move to Truckee, I'm very, very hypersensitive to noise, and I see something like this, it doesn't necessarily make me want to buy or not buy in Truckee, but it might make me want to start asking more questions, visit the airport, ask for more clarification on things, maybe talk to my prospective neighbors, and that sort of a thing. Yeah. So that's what I was kind of hoping for. And
I'm glad to hear you say that, Dave, because the last thing I want to see us do is provide something that's chilling to folks that may want to move up here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I agree, because I think on the whole, it's awesome up here, and especially like when I watch the world events of the last month, it seems like every day I wake up, I'm like, I'm really thankful I'm here. I'm so glad I'm in Truckee. It's a great place. And I think, to me, one of the nice things about the document, or at least about the intent of the document, maybe you don't get this from that document, but is that we're basically saying that there is some impact of the airport that might bother some people, and there is some benefit of the airport that is intended for everybody. That there's so much good that comes from the airport that is non-aeronautical. We wanted to make that clear, but we wanted to make it balanced. I think the three of us were in complete agreement that we did not want this to be a fluff marketing piece, talking about how, wonderful everything was, and it was all roses. It was like, we wanted to provide a balance that people could.
Are we going to get an opportunity to go forward on this document today? Is there more discussion we can have?
That's what I'm trying to find out, Lynn, if anybody has any more comments on it, or if we have a motion to let the work.
I have a comment. I have a comment when you get to me.
I thought we got to you. We didn't?
No.
Oh, okay.
That's all right.
Go ahead, Lynn.
No biggie. It's no biggie. On the community connections, I'm having a heartburn over the use of the word affordable housing, and I would personally like to have that changed to what it really is, and that's workforce housing. So after my discussion with Hardy, I realized that to me, affordable housing and workforce housing are two different things, and I think we should talk about what the results that the airport actually got involved in, and it was workforce housing. So I think we should change that.
Okay. Stacy, do you have any particular objection to that? Okay, the changes made in the document.
Thank you.
Construction of workforce housing and forest management for the prevent blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I think
sounds much better.
Yeah. So if nobody else has any comments on this, I think what we're looking for is a motion to permit the ad hoc group to take this now to a real estate representative for input and comment, and then based on that to the board.
I'll make a motion that we take this document to a real estate representative and ultimately to the board for approval. I guess that would be before we start designing a expensive flyer. Let's do that in there.
Yeah. A second on that?
I'll second.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we've got a second from Kat and Lee. Kat came in first, so maybe she won't. At least I'm liking it. All right, roll call vote.
Member Diamond,
Yes.
Member Golden,
Yes.
Member Roll.
I'd just like to say that I'm really impressed with this document, and it went from something that I really wasn't sure what the direction was or who the audience was, and you guys have done an amazing job putting it into a much more concise format and also messaging very clearly what you wanted to say. So I wholeheartedly say aye.
Thank you, Kat. And I just need to pause us for 1 second. I did not ask for public comment, but David just, and there is no public comment. So I apologize. So Hardy, I'm sorry. Continue on with the.
Member Lorenz,
I,
Member Caldwell, Member Larson.
Yes. Just a quick question, David. Are we going to address that noise and impact, environmental impact paragraph? I didn't include that in the motion.
Yeah, well, you Stacy, and I will figure that. We'll figure something.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Definitely. Okay, cool. Appreciate that, folks. On H5, the pilot survey, staff will present a draft survey questions, which we've seen in our pack. And then Hardy, do you want to take the lead on this?
I think Mark Covey is going to walk us through it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mark
Yep.
Covey.
Yep. Thank you, David, and thank you, Hardy. So as you all are aware, we have sort of sought out to revamp our incentive program a little bit with three basic objectives, and that's to reduce flights between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m., align our voluntary curfew with the California noise ordinance, and then also importantly to simplify the airport's curfew system and enhance our participation. So basically, we've designed this survey to gauge the interest and the adherence that we would have with a simplification to a singular standardized curfew period, and then also understand what some of the operational needs may be of some of our pilot community to fly early in the morning in the summertime when we have high heat and high density altitude, and also ascertain what sort of unplanned conditions may arise that would prevent the adherence of a singular existing curfew. So what we're asking of the ACAT committee here is to simply review the survey questions and provide feedback to us. The way this survey would be administered is through SurveyMonkey emailed to our constituents in the hangars, and then also some very common heavy use itinerant operators and others as well that come to the airport. So do we want to just pull that up real quick and then take a look at what the questions are, or has everyone had a chance to review the questions, and do they have feedback that is ready to be provided?
Hardy, did you want to add something before we go through the ACAT membership?
No, I don't think so. I think the survey, the only point of caution is that surveys can come with a lot of scrutiny from different people. And so how you organize the survey and what information you're trying to glean from surveying people and the methodology and the response and all that stuff gets really technical, and people seem to care a lot about it. I would just urge us to understand that this is just, it's another tool in the tool chest of trying to evaluate whether this curfew modification is going to be successful. So really what the concept right now is, let's apply some really well-crafted survey questions to the pilot community to see if they would even be willing to work through a modification on the airport's behalf, because we don't want to enact any sort of policy and just launch it on the pilot community and have them say, hey, none of this works for us. The curfew ends oftentimes in my office or in Kevin's office if somebody has an issue with it. And so what we're trying to do is kind of proactively look into that pilot group and understand and craft the policy around that, so we don't have to have one-off exceptions to the curfew rule or answer questions that really put us in kind of that gray area of policy interpretation. So the questions are not done. I looked, when we formulated them, Mark and I, they're just the best start that we had. So just keep that in mind. And I think the real objective is to reach into the pilot community, understand if they're willing to make changes, and financially, what's the sweet spot? Where can we get them to comply the highest amount of time to reduce the most flights after 10 or before 7?
Okay. And so we'll go through the membership for comments, and I'll start that. I think the premise of having of surveying pilots is a great idea. The concerns that I've got, there's specific concerns, and then there's a conceptual concern, which you might completely disagree with. The specific concerns is that when I went through the survey, I'm a hangar tenant. So I'm a operator or aircraft operator at the airport. By the time I got to the question about, do I participate in the Fly Quiet incentive program? I already didn't know the right answer, because it says yes for Fly Quiet 1 or yes for Fly Quiet 2. I don't even know which one I'm in. It was so confusing to me, that whole program, that I know that I'm at the most restrictive level, but I don't know which one that was. So and there were some other questions in here where I was thinking like that, and again, you're not getting into the specifics of the question, but in the generalization of it, that are we asking questions in a way that is encouraging pilots to start thinking strategically about their answers? It's like, well, wait, this might be the right answer, but maybe I should answer it that way, because I'll bet that what they're trying to do is something from this. And so my first thought was, if we are going to do a SurveyMonkey based survey, at the very least, there be good introductory paragraph that explains where we're at now and why we're even talking about this. And as a reminder, like, before you take this survey, if you have questions about your participation in the current program, you can call blah, 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 and ask, like, what level am I, or when, that kind of a thing. That said, and without getting into the wordsmithing of the individual questions, I wonder whether the better course of action for this would actually be to, if you're going to send out an email to the pilots, to send out an email to the pilots and say, would you agree to a 5-minute phone interview with Mark or whomever is going to conduct this, to get your feelings on the Fly Quiet thing. And the reason I say that is because we're not talking about a huge base of pilots. First of all, the response rate to an emailed survey is usually pretty sad anyway, right? So it's difficult to say, if you're looking at a 15 or 20% response rate, that it's representative of the pilot community in the first place. And I don't, maybe you would get better than this, but I'm just thinking just standard survey response. But the more important thing is, if Mark is on the phone with me and he's asking me questions about this, then I have an opportunity to clarify before I go on the record making a comment about it. And more importantly, that Mark then gets a sense of, like, well, here's the data. Generally, I found that most pilots were in support of X, Y, or Z, simplifying the program or leaving the program alone, or most pilots seem to have a fear of whatever. So I would that would be just my comment, is I would, if we're going to do a printed or an automated survey, that we absolutely provide explanation up front about what's going on, and an opportunity to contact Mark before the survey is taken for clarification, and that more ideally that the survey is conducted by Mark on a pilot by pilot basis. Then going down to Lee, what do you think, Lee?
Well, with this survey, it would just go to the folks that are hangared at Truckee, correct? That have aircraft here. I think there's nothing wrong with asking questions to the existing pilot population. There's no such thing as a stupid question in aviation. It certainly can't hurt. And I think some folks would be real open to a 5-minute call and some wouldn't. You know how people are. But it can't hurt to do that. And, up front, though, we really need to explain what's the what's the concept, or what are we looking at changing? Is the present system working okay? You know, stuff like that. I mean, I think most people are pretty good with it. I can understand how people in the heat of the day, meaning the morning in summertime when it's light at 6 o'clock in the morning and it's cool, they'd want to take off in a low powered airplane. I get that. And then on the other side, coming in the evening, if an aircraft comes in and unforecast winds or whatever, and I remember years ago we had an aircraft come in, they were doing flight training, and unforecast winds got them, and they're coming up the valley, and instead of doing the safe thing following Highway 80, they went direct over very unhospitable terrain to get in before the 10 o'clock deadline. And that's not cool. People, you know, they were under the gun to get back in, and they did something that wasn't safe. But, you know, I wasn't there, but that's the story I got. So we want to be sure that people aren't under so much pressure that they may end up making decisions that aren't in the 100% in the name of safety. But again, you know, it's once you're flying the airplane, you're the commander, and they got to do what they got to do. But yeah, I think 5-minute call it's fine. Good idea. We'll see what the results are. You know, formulate good questions. They're simple to understand, so people aren't, you know, they're not blindsided by something. They're going to have to go back to the schoolroom and try to figure out what we're talking about here. But you know, it can't hurt.
Okay, Kat, what are you thinking?
I agree with everything that Lee said, and I don't really have anything to add to this.
Okay, Joe.
Sorry, yeah, I'm muting. Yeah, I think it's a good idea so long as the district understands what it's trying to accomplish, and I'm certain they do, right? I think but making that clear to the pilots that you survey is this is the current situation. We want to see if there's a way we can make it better. And you guys, you're going to do a better job at that than I'm just describing. But you're clear on your objective, and so long as you've got that kind of in your hip pocket or sharing that with the folks you're surveying, it's a good idea, clearly.
Okay, Stacy.
Yeah, I don't see this as any different from just doing some kind of qualitative and quantitative analysis of the success of a potential program or policy. And so I think to Hardy's point, you need to couch the survey itself in some language of exploratory committee on curfew, like to kind of set expectations so it doesn't raise more questions. I also encourage the qualitative phone calls where appropriate, because I think that gives you a chance to have a touch point with some of the pilots and get some more feedback that you might not get in a survey. And then, you know, maybe set a target. We'd like to have 20 surveys completed, or 25, or the first 20 who complete it get a cookie from Red Truck or something like that, to just encourage that, hit a number that makes you feel like you have enough to kind of go on, you know, pepper it with some qualitative 5-minute, 10-minute phone calls where appropriate. You're right. There are a lot of people who don't want to do that, but there's people who will give you their time to help you think through a future program or policy so that it's successful. So I think you're on the right track. I don't have any additions with the questions. Just always know that every question has to lead you to the way you're going to present the analysis at the end. So you're always working your document backwards or your presentation backwards. So whatever question you're asking should always, you know, have what it is you'll be saying to the board, or what it is you'll be saying to us or the staff, because you had 20 people who responded and this percentage believed this. So that tells us that. So think it through so that you don't have unnecessary questions or unintended consequences by asking a question that might lead someone to an expectation. And so again, couch it in, this is an exploratory survey. to craft the right program and policies around this. And I just think Lee's comment is so important in this conversation. And I can't underscore enough that at the end of the day, it's about safety and not peer pressure on when they have to be back. And so you're going to really need to maybe even ask that question in some way. How does the airport balance that tension? And that might be a good one just for the qualitative phone calls. So anyway, I think it's good stuff, and I think you're just doing the right work, which is before making these kinds of big decisions and trying to implement. You're getting feedback from your customer, or from your stakeholders.
And Lynn, are you there?
Okay, I'm going to try not to editorialize too much. I want to make sure I understand the goal. And is the goal to try and reduce that early morning, late night noise nuisance that the community has, made mention of? Just a simple yes or no if that's the goal.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, and the next question is, how many pilots are we actually talking about? I guess, Mark, that's your bailiwick. How many pilots are we actually talking about? That if it's the based people.
We would be looking about 200. Was it Hardy? About 250 folks that are based hangar tenants. Okay,
good. Thank you. Okay, so going back to the questions, I look at that and go, wow, isn't this fun? But my suggestion would be that to trying to take in what others have said is that to contact your 250 pilots in some way, however you normally would do that, to let them know that you have a goal, you're going to get a survey, and just alert them that the survey is coming. And then now they know that they're going to get it. I don't know how much staff time you think you can afford to call up everybody on the phone. And not that they shouldn't be able to call and clarify, as David suggests. But I would suggest you contact them, number one, to let them know the survey is coming. And then what I'm interested in is the results of the survey. And I think Survey Monkeys do work. You will never get 100%, but if the pilots are pretty smart folks and if there's something in it for them that's very positive, I think they'll answer your questions. So that's my suggestion: is that you alert them it's coming, and you do the monkey, and then I would be interested in seeing the results.
Great, that's excellent feedback from everybody. It's much appreciated.
All right, so I got a question for you, Mark and/or Hardy. Being that this is under action items, what sort of action are you looking for from us?
Our requested action was just basically what you folks have done, and that was to review the questions and then provide feedback to staff on what your perception was on how we should proceed. And I feel like, barring any other comment from Hardy, I feel like we've attained that and taken some good notes on what all of your thoughts are, and have a pretty clear mindset as to what we should do to proceed on this venture.
Okay, so Hardy, I got a question for you. Being that this is, I don't know the legalities of this, but being that this is under an action item, do we officially have to vote to take no action and just let Mark continue on with or do we just not do anything?
You could have consensus.
Okay. Wait, Hardy, you're muted.
Unmute. Thank you. No, that's correct. Lauren corrected. We just take your guidance, but I did want to mention, which I didn't send you the summary document that I sent to Kevin, which is like a 3-page summary I sent to Mark this morning that we've circulated around, which has a bunch of different ideas about it. But one of the tensions that exist with the curfew that's been here ever since I've been a pilot flying here at the airport is that the airport attempts to incentivize pilots to not fly between certain hours. And it works really well. And you'll see that numerically speaking, all of our, most of our night and out of curfew operations happen right at the fringe periods. So 10 to 10:30 or 11, 5:45 to 6:30, 6:31, 6:35, 7 o'clock, somewhere in there. So the curfew, actually, the existing structures work super well to keep operations in that window. We don't have a huge night noise problem to start out with. Just pound for pound at 40,000 operations, we don't have a lot of night operations. But one of the things that comes up when you talk to the pilot community and say, hey, we'd like you to fly after 10 or before 7, are you willing to take an incentive on that? They say, well, if you force me not to fly before 7 o'clock, I'll just drop out and I'm going to fly whenever I want. And so that's one of the pieces that staff always has to balance through. Do we make modifications that would take a group that's participating at a pretty high level right now for a voluntary type of program? And do we ask just a little bit more, or do we incentivize just a little bit more and then lose part of that participation volume and then erupt annoyance within the community because people are flying out of curfew? There's a balance and a tipping point there. And I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to survey the pilot community to get take a temperature on where that balance exists, and then try and figure out how to capitalize so that we don't leave money on the table and incentivize too much, but we also incentivize enough to actually push people within that volume after 10 or before 7. So it's quite tricky. And in my experience, you're right, David, people are really confused on the curfew about what FQ1 and FQ2 mean. Those were done back in 2003, 2004 timeframe. So that's really just the backstory a little bit on the balance we try and strike with this whole curfew question.
Okay, so but you have, Mark, you've got what you need from ACAT, and we'll just let you move on, and we'll move on.
That's my belief, yes.
Okay. All right, great. Thanks for that. Okay, so on to item I6, a discussion item, how the Truckee Tahoe Airport District works with our community. Staff will present a summary document that will describe the work associated with the combating noise and annoyance within the community. Hardy, are you taking this, or Mark is taking this, or who is taking that?
I'm going to kick it off, and then we'll try and, it's going to be really brief. I've had a lot of conversations.
I'm sorry, Hardy, just 1 second before you go into this. Does anybody need to take a break, or should we move on?
Yes.
Okay, Lynn wants to take a break. Should we just take a few minutes?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. We're on hold for 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
T-2 and counting. All right, what a geek.
Are my 2 minutes up?
We forgot to take public comment on that last topic.
public comment
On the hangar incentive.
on the pilot survey?
Yeah, I gotta ask David. If David, can you hear me? Was there any public comment on that last topic?
There was not.
Oh, good that we didn't offend anybody. I'm still getting used to this. I'm sorry. I apologize. All right, are we all back? If you're not back, speak up. All right.
Here.
Everybody's there. I can see everybody and hear Lynn, and Hardy's back. All right. All right, let's continue on, Hardy. Go for it. Lauren's back now too.
All right. I've talked to a number of different people about ways to articulate what the airport's done on behalf of the community. We have a lot of publications, maps, handbooks. I'll call it public information, campaign strategies, outreach that have been done to summarize that information. And when David and I were talking last week, I had just gotten off the heels of having a meeting with Kevin Smith to talk about formulating a community annoyance reduction strategic plan of sorts. And so it was really kind of a broad brush plan, strategic plan, value, master plan. I don't know, we're not sure about the form, but really trying to wrap our arms around what exactly is our tactic to reduce community noise and annoyance. And there's all these things that we do, and flight procedures is one of them, the three-legged stool, airspace development, the tower. We do a bunch of outreach, biodiesel airplanes. The list goes on and on. I'm going to show you dozens of them here in a second. So the concept is, do we want to take the time to produce a comprehensive document that would essentially outline, and I don't know the name of the document, so I just titled it Truckee-Tahoe Airport District Working for Our Community, but you can title it just as easily some community infographic describing what we've done as well. So what I'm asking today is just to walk through a conversation with me briefly about this concept. This project, we wouldn't have the time or the bandwidth to undertake this project until the fall. So this is talking about September, October timeframe, depending on when we do outreach for flight procedures, because that's quickly becoming a big piece of what we're going to take our time in 2020 to complete. So there's two documents that exist right now that kind of satisfy this need. One of them is the Noise and Annoyance Handbook that I don't know, can just everybody raise their hand if they know what that is. Does anybody know what that is? Okay, so most folks on ACAT know what that is, but I'm going to put it up on the screen and show you essentially just a table of contents for the Noise and Annoyance Handbook, so we can just show you a little bit about what we've done, and then I'll jump into that other document. So I'm going to share my screen for a second here.
Can Lynn see what's this is going on here? Okay, so
no,
Lynn,
Unfortunately,
no can do.
okay.
I can talk to you on the phone about this, but this is the table of contents for the. Go ahead.
Were we supposed to get this document in our backup material?
No, I didn't include it. I just didn't have time to walk through it. So but I can call you and go through it with you. So
if you just send me a copy of it, that's fine.
You got it. I will do when we hang up.
Okay, thank you.
This document, obviously, it was just recently updated. David Vanquest did some work on it. Keeley did some work. Mark Lamb did some work on it. This was developed with a consultant a couple years ago to act as one of the principal guidance documents for the community to understand how we respond with community noise and annoyance. So essentially, you can see the table of contents. It goes through the overview and the restrictions and the role of ACAT, past mitigation efforts, and then how our procedure and process works internally to respond to the community, and then all the noise mitigation measures, flight procedures, et cetera. And then it gives the basics of airport operations, kind of how the mechanics of how an airport works in relation to the community. And then it's got this education and outreach component. And then it talks a little bit about ledge and reg, legislation, regulation type of documents, which in the world of policymaking is very important because it really guides a lot of what we can and can't do. A good example of that would be our curfew. Our curfew, obviously, we can't make a mandatory curfew, A lot of times people ask, just tell the big jets not to come here. Just ban the helicopters so they don't make people mad. That's just not a possibility in the legal world. So we put that in there to describe to people how it works. And then we put in the national trends, kind of where general aviation is headed. So this is one of the documents that we've already done to kind of describe what the airport is doing, is working on, kind of the future, some of the restrictions. So that's part of it. Now I'm going to show you another document that was a document that was developed for, Lauren put this together in support of a managed growth workshop back in 2016-17. So this was something where the board wanted to talk about how the airport could restrict growth around the community. So, hey, can we do something to actually achieve this? And this document is just a sample. So the content doesn't really apply to what we're talking about, but essentially it's a 6-page document. It talks about these principles, what's a vision, what's a goal, what's implementation, what are the building blocks? And then it goes into a strategy, and our strategy statement may be something like the airport works in every turn to support the community and reduce annoyance. And then it goes into the way that we get there, kind of the big box, the high level overview of what we do and how we interact with the community, our goals. And then it gets to the principles, obviously the fundamental or the primary or general law or truth from which all others are derived. And then you get to the kind of meat and potatoes, which is all these things that we do, which is the implementation component. These are a relic from that meeting. So these aren't current, but this is just a good example of a document that we could show to the community to really summarize much of what we try and do. To David's point, which David's saying, hey, show me something to point to, show me something where I can point the community to answer some of these questions about what exactly the airport's doing. So this is one of the documents that was developed for a different purpose, but we could modify it if we thought the infographic was the right way to go. I really like these type of documents because for me, I can focus in on a certain area. So when I look at this, my eye goes over to like active pilot outreach. Most people don't know what the ACIP or the ACLEP are, but you can look at things, and if it interests you, then you can hone in on it, and you can either ask somebody a question or read further in the document. There's a final component here where it talks about the building blocks, which are at that point were the big box board level initiatives that people were working on, staff and the board and the ACAT, to try and get some of these things done. And you'll see that the airspace study has been done, the surveillance study has been done. We completed the ACRP report. There's limiting ops white paper that's out there. The noise and annoyance mitigation handbook has been completed. So many of the things that were in this back in 17 have been done. So this is something that we're thinking of from a staff level to develop either a strategic community annoyance reduction plan or a descriptor document that could be published, keeping in mind that we already have a noise and annoyance handbook, which is essentially the long version, the non-annotated, unabridged, kind of long technical version of what you could talk to the community about. So Mark Lamb has a number of different initiatives that he's working on, that he works on a weekly basis to get all of this information out in a kind of a formatted way, out through social media and other pieces of the website and others. So he has a lot to say about how we communicate this stuff. But anyway, my goal really was to just show you this and talk a little bit about how the airport articulates what we're doing to reduce this noise and annoyance. And I know David Diamond can help me describe what we've talked about in the past as well. So I'm going to unshare my screen unless somebody wants me to point something on this document. I'm seeing no interest there. We'll just go back. And so that's a little bit.
Just a quick question, Hardy. Those last few documents that you shared, tell me again what the source of that document is. Is it a part?
Yeah, it's a PDF. It was an infographic that staff, primarily Kevin Smith and myself, gave to Lauren. Lauren assembled a big, huge infographic out of it, and she used it as an exhibit during our managed growth workshop. And I think that was in, Lauren could shake her head, I think that was in 2017, maybe?
Yeah, 2016, when the board was struggling with the question of what managed growth is. and what the district can control and not control, and all the factors that are in play when the board wants to talk about managing growth, i.e. development, broad sense.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
And this is just an example form. I know you know that, but I just wanted to reiterate for everybody on the call that this is just a sample of what could be used to describe what I think people are asking us for.
Okay. All right. Hold on one second. I'm going to waive my comments on it or defer my comments on it right now and let other people have a go at it. So Lee, what do you think?
Well, I was just going to ask Hardy if he would be kind enough to CC me on the document he's going to send to Lynn. The noise and annoyance handbook. It was 32 pages. Could you please include me on that email, Hardy?
You got it. I'll send it to the whole ACAT there.
Hardy, has that update been published yet, or is it still in draft form?
It's done. I just was talking to Keely and Mark this morning on the email about how we're promoting it. And I asked that we do some social media outreach on it and repost it with the current date and just recirculate it of sorts.
Okay. And Lee, was that anything else from you?
No, for now, that's good. And I appreciate it. And I will sit here and diligently listen. Thank you.
Okay, Kat.
What exactly are we being asked to do here?
We're not being asked to do anything. It's just a discussion.
Okay.
We're working on this.
Okay. I guess it's hard to make too many comments without seeing the document in front of me. Like I just feel like this is kind of last minute, but I'm happy to look at it in full and make comments later.
Okay. And Joe, any thoughts?
I guess Hardy, I mean, this airport does a great job with noise and mitigations and it never occurred to me that you guys didn't have a strategy. I mean, am I reading that right?
Well, we have an internal strategy that we use, and I can tell you, I have my elevator pitch that I've talked about for many number of years on that, but yeah, we do have a strategy, but I think what we haven't necessarily done is publish something separate. If you look through our master plan, any of our guiding documents, you'll see policies, master plan, policy instructions, and staff guidance that all collectively give us that strategic plan, right? But we haven't published necessarily a standalone document that says that. And so that's one concept, that's one outgrowth of this idea that we're talking about today. The idea really started with the conversation with David Diamond and I have, and I could tell that the conversation that David was giving me was coming up multiple times again about, hey, I wish we could articulate all these great things that the airport is doing. And so the reason I'm talking today is maybe it's not a noise and annoyance reduction strategic plan. Maybe it's a marketing and community outreach strategy. Maybe it's a community marketing outreach initiative that is kicked off. I guess one of the questions is that what form and function would be good. I threw this out as an idea because it rang a bell with me when I talked to David, and I can't wait to hear from David Diamond because I know he's going to explain this better than I am.
Maybe not.
Did that answer it, Joe?
Well, yeah, definitely. And I guess, we've said it many times throughout today's meeting is, just recognize who your audience is and what are you trying to tell them? And again, there's nothing, I think it's a great idea, but maybe what I'm saying is it's more an acknowledgement of what I think the airport is doing a pretty good job at already, which is, what those mitigations are and then communicating them. I'm looking at the flyer I still have a copy of it. I can't remember the date of it, but it's branded Fly Quiet. And so just about anything you guys communicate has a Fly Quiet brand or has kind of a noise consideration. So great to have a strategy, not suggesting don't, but I feel like you're doing a pretty good job already.
Stacy?
Yes. It's interesting that we're working on what was kind of intended to be a real estate guide, and this is kind of bubbling up at the staff level as a potential way to bundle up a lot of dense strategy, decision-making, policy kind of stuff and put it in a way that can be shared at the community level. So I think there's some work that could be useful. I mean, suddenly I started thinking of the document that the ad hoc is working on is almost an executive summary of what you're talking about. So I think that could benefit from some bringing together of that conversation to see how we can work in tandem on that, because I agree with Joe. A lot of good work, good decision-making, good governance around good policy is in place. And now it's about how do we translate it and, you know, digest it, translate it, and get it in the hands of our community. And I think that the noise and annoyance handbook and its update, you know, that's a go-to piece, you know, for a group like ACAT and the board, but maybe not a go-to piece for a community member right up off the bat. And so being able to bundle up in some way an easily digestible like reference guide to the depth that's there, as well as those infographics I could already see taking on a life of their own about how to talk about impacts, community impacts. And there's so many layers of that. And one of those infographics, I know that wasn't intended for that to be on the table to rethink, but it just immediately made me start wanting to kind of organize them in the different categories of impacts that would make sense. And so again, I just go back to, I think we could all benefit from one conversation here to make sure we're not on two divergent paths when we're almost starting to accomplish something that is very mutually beneficial there. So those are my comments.
Understood.
Lynn?
I'm having trouble making a comment on something I haven't actually seen. So, but it sounds a lot like we're reinventing the wheel, or I'm not really sure what and so it's hard to comment because I haven't seen it. But didn't we hire a PR firm to do just this sort of thing, Mark?
Is Mark here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, didn't we just hire somebody to do this kind of stuff for us and get the message out? Am I missing something here?
Well, this message has been out. We're just, Hardy wanted to revisit updating it and get ACAT thoughts on maybe even ideas. As we've said many, many times before, all this documentation and flyers and information that we have is out, it's presented, it's on the webpage. Anybody that's interested in looking for it, it's another thing to get people to actually dive into it.
Okay, so when Hardy, when you send this to me and to Lee, is it going to be in a printable form so I just can't sit at the computer for hours reading this stuff? Is it printable?
Yeah, we can print it, or we can print it for you and leave it here in hard copy if you'd like as well.
Yeah, you can just send it to me and I can print it myself, but I just didn't. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. No problem. And I'll answer more questions when you open it up if you want to go through it.
Hardy, this is Lee. I heard that part. If you could print it for me, because we're having issues with our printer here.
Okay.
And then I can come in and get it. That would be great.
How many pages is it?
32.
32. Okay.
Yeah, no problem. I'll print it up. I'll print some copies and I'll send it and email it. And if you have questions about it, once you receive it, call me and we'll go over it.
Thank you.
Awesome,
You
man.
got it.
Thank you very much.
Lynn, was that anything else from you on that?
No, I just wanted to say that it was hard for me to comment on something I haven't seen.
Understood. Yeah. So
Okay, got it.
just so my comments on it, going back to the conversation that Hardy and I referenced, I'm glad Stacy picked up on the real estate guide connection here, because that's exactly where this came from. It was like the real estate guide started out as quite a long document, and it got narrowed down to a very, very specific, more friendly document. But what I was thinking about in the real estate is like, okay, so if somebody does have questions about more of the meat and potatoes of what we're brushing over in the real estate guide, where would they go for this? And that's where Hardy and I got another conversation about that kind of like, is there a single document that is basically like the real estate guide, like as Stacy put it, is an executive summary of this more in-depth thing. So if somebody actually had questions about it, and then to me, as a content creator, I feel a lot more comfortable brushing over topics if I know that there's a place to send people for more information, because not, as Mark put out, it's like the airport can put out these documents and explain everything till the cows come home. And then people don't want to necessarily read the document because it's like, I don't know if this applies to me. I'm not sure that the information I'm looking for is in here, or if this is interest to me or whatever. So I kind of did see it as a like real estate guide feeder document into something more. And then this was where that conversation came from about like, do we have a central content repository where we, in the commercial world, what we would have referred to as a documentation suite, which is like, here's the official language that we use every time we talk about noise and annoyance. Here are the things we say. Here are the points we make, that sort of a thing. And I think this is where Hardy sort of picked up on this and went with it. I've seen the noise and annoyance handbook, the old version. I've not seen the new version, so I'm excited to see the new version. And I was glad to see all that information out there, but I did feel like there was more information than there was strategy about the consumption of the information. Like we weren't necessarily knowing who the audience was and what their point of entry to the content was, which is super important when you're generating content, you know, who you're trying to reach and why would they be interested in the document? What question are they trying to answer? What information are they trying to get at that particular point in time? As opposed to just putting out documentation that's just a factual information dump of everything you know how to say. Because that's, I think, my experience, that's the kind of document people are less likely to want to read through. If they see a document that answers a question that's on their mind, or if they're led there from something else that brought up that question, I think they're more likely to read it. So I'm glad to see that. I think personally, I think of the infographic thing as more of a presentation of a chunk of information rather than a presentation of information. So like if there isn't an infographic, like for example, if Mark does a campaign of social media once every week, some social media information goes out and there's an official infographic that's used to describe something, but that description and that infographic would then point to that other document for more information, like the official document on that. I think that you've got a nice information flow there that people who are interested can follow it, and the people who want to digest something quickly would have the digestion of that information. So I think it's great. I would love to see staff continue to work on it. I would like, as Stacy mentioned, I would like the ad hoc for the real estate guide to kind of be connected to that in somehow, if we can, to make sure at the very least that we're not offering any conflicting information, and that maybe some of the information that you've provided in there will help us answer the questions we've got about our own content right now. Stacy.
Thank you. I just want to also add to kind of a next step recommendation from here is that we take a look at what's being presented on the existing website and make sure we're not duplicating or just kind of, I want to be careful and put our energy and resources into gaps and necessary, I am grateful that the staff brought this forward because that's always an indication to me of a need. And what I don't want to do is create busy work if there's existing staff created documentation or content that's out there and we can say, oh, we didn't realize it was there. Like the noise abatement handbook. I think that was given to me to read prior to my service on ACAT. And so I just want to be careful that we're not creating work where there's not a need or it's something in existence and that it gets validated at the staff level. And so I looked at the noise abatement section on the website while we were just sitting here talking, and there's some good content there, but I do see some gaps. So that made me feel like, okay, there's a need for some translating of this, but I definitely want it verified that this is necessary and that there isn't something in existence. And then just make sure it all kind of connects so that we're all working kind of in the same direction.
Okay, Hardy or Mark, did either of you have anything to add to that? I'm thinking, I'm sorry, Mark Covey, I'm thinking Mark Lamb just because it's in his, but you can also, and Mark Covey, if you've got something to add, you can add it too, but I wanted to make sure Mark Lamb had an opportunity to say something about it.
No, I do agree that I think maybe the real estate document would be a good place that we could link the noise and annoyance handbook as an additional resource for people that maybe wanted to look into the topic even at a deeper level.
Yeah, I agree. Hardy,
and also the procedures. I mean, we talked about that real estate, and maybe we don't call it the real estate document. Maybe we come up with the next name for it, for what it's turned, the evolution of it. But we were excited because we feel like we distilled the information down enough to actually have some space on the backside. And so maybe, David, this is kind of leading us to some kind of compendium, if you will, of documents or resources that are in existence that we can point community members towards.
I would love that. Joe?
Yeah, so I love this process because as I hear more of the great comments, I start to think a little bit more deeply, and hopefully that's a good thing for everybody. I guess Stacy's point about, just making sure it's filling a gap, and I guess that makes me think back to the comments about kind of having an evaluation, it sounded like, of your communication strategy. And so just an affirmation from Hardy, I guess, that the airport does indeed have a communication strategy, and that strategy kind of highlights all of the objectives that the airport has in terms of safety, community outreach, noise abatement, et cetera. And that this document really is in alignment with that communication strategy. And if it is, then I certainly think that that's a worthwhile kind of document to do. But if it's more of kind of a one-off because we don't have something, then that communication strategy either needs to be amended or rethink the value of doing this effort.
That's a good point. And we did undertake, with a lot of insight from ACAT, our strategic communications plan with Aviatrix. They selected that vendor and got the plan, and so we do have that plan. And I'm not an expert in the communications field, and I know that people on this call have spent a lot of time in their careers working through that process. I think as we face different, so ADSB was a really good example. That's the example I'll use. Our communication methods and strategies had to be totally modified to make sure that we reached into all these corners that the board wanted us to look at when we did that initiative. And so for me, that general document that Aviatrix came up with and that Mark uses to kind of guide his, I'll call it daily, weekly, monthly, that nest egg of all those different initiatives that Mark puts up through social media and different communication strategies. I think this may be, just hearing ACAT talk, there may be a place somewhere for, I'll call it another enhanced little container that talks a little bit about our strategic noise and annoyance reduction strategies, strategic goals, plans, etc. And I like, I don't want to get too far off the beam, but I really like what David talked about when he has these documents that point back to another document. It can be really complicated in the aviation industry because there's so many publications. If you've seen our publication page on our website, there's hundreds, if not thousands of pages of technical information there. So I do think it's great to say, hey, here's a container, if you like what you see in here and you want more information, points that person somewhere. This project has a vector that heads over to the board of directors. And that's why Kevin and I were talking about it, because he's working some initiatives with the board that he thinks that this possible potential strategic plan element may work for us. So I think from my perspective, I think what I could do is just touch base with the ad hoc on the real estate guide, let them know where we're headed, keep up ACAT updated, and then bring back any information that Kevin and I have on where the document's progressing, if there is a document or program or project. And then in the meantime, I would take insight from anybody who has a way to point back to those technical documents that are pre-existing. And that's what Mark Lamb was pointing out. And he said, hey, just point back to the Noise and Annoyance Handbook. We've got it. It's right. It's 32 pages. I don't know too many community people that are going to read all 32 pages, but there's pretty meaningful stuff in there. So those are just my thoughts, just out of order, but.
Okay, I think even if it's a long document that you've got on the back end, the advantage of having something like that is that you have the potential to have a more cohesive communication strategy with regard to everybody who's involved. Like, for example, when David Van Quest is taking a call from the community and he's saying, well, the airport has done blah, blah. Oh, the airport hasn't done anything. I mean, it's like David has actually something to show them that's specific to like what their topic is, whatever their particular thing is. And I think that's super valuable. And then you get kind of like this documentation suite, and then you can put it on a revision schedule, like every half a year, somebody reviews it and sees what needs to be updated, or plans updates because ADSB will be deployed. So because ADSB is deployed, we know that we have to remove all the future references to ADSB and make them current references and that whole thing. And then as Joe was saying, and then ideally the entire suite is under some strategy of communication that it's a tail wagging the dog thing. It's like, what are you trying to do? And do you have all the tools you need to do all the high level things you want to do? And do you have just enough, or are you being redundant and wasting effort because this document and this document are the same things? So I think that I'd love to, I'd love to see that exercise, or at least if it's already there, to see maybe offline, if we could kind of go over to understanding of that. And then at some point in time, when we do the powwow, we might discover that what makes sense for the real estate to guide is for the ad hoc committee to just give that to staff to make a part of that, with our guidance, as opposed to us doing this separately. But Stacy, you had a comment?
Yeah, so what I'm hearing, I think what I'm hearing Hardy say is there's another board level implication for these conversations that they've started kind of at the staff level, and that they're calling the noise abatement kind of strategic plan a way to kind of get their arms around, what is this program? How do we communicate it? How do we inventory kind of the policies and documentation around it? And then how do we create something that can be kind of publicly understood? And so I would say, from my perspective on ACAT, that I want to stay close to that conversation as it gets queued up for the board, because I feel like that is one of our charters at ACAT is around that noise abatement, reduction of annoyance kind of space. And so however we can be helpful as you get your arms around how deep you're going to go. Is it really a strategic plan, or is it some kind of assessment of where you are with some layered on infographics that can make it a little bit more digestible? And at some point, there's a through line to what we're talking about in that ad hoc. But I think, David, the ad hoc is a little bit broader than just specific noise abatement. We've undertaken more expansive, like, this public institution or quasi-public institution has, a governing board and a paid staff and a volunteer base. And this is how the money comes in. This is where the money goes out. These are the impacts, both negative and positive, that it has in the community. And it's a much broader kind of meet your neighbor, whereas what I think Hardy is presenting is a finer, more refined approach to all of the work that's been done on abatement, because they've got a huge body of work and they're trying to now kind of wrap their brain around inventorying it, what's missing, and then how do we make it palpable. So I would just say, Hardy, on that topic, I think it's really important for ACAT to be leaning in and supporting you, but it also sounds like from a staff board perspective, you guys are still right sizing what the project is. Did I get that right?
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I totally heard everything you said, and I think it's a great approach. And I'll just put a standing item on the ACAT meeting on my staff report in my notebook to give you an update as we go forward. And we can do the same on the ad hoc side. And David and I talk a lot about different things. And so, David, if you're in the office, and you can also give me your insight as we go forward, and I can keep everybody in the loop there. Again, I don't think we're going to make significant headway on this until September at the earliest, until we get through some of the flight procedures work, but I think it's something to keep on the back burner for everybody involved.
Okay, cool. Anything else on that topic? Do we have any public comment on that topic? Look, I remembered.
David, we do not have any public comment.
Oh man. Okay. So the subcommittee reports, item K7. I'm going to waive the reports on the subcommittees for emergency landing map, safe haven, and real estate guide, because we just covered all of that stuff. Unless anybody who's on any of those committees wants to add something to those particular committees. Anybody, or we're good on all that? Okay, so we're good on all that. Yeah. Oh, Joe, go ahead.
Hey, just real quick. So are we disbanding the emergency landing ad hoc?
No, I would say that we don't disband that until we get it all the way through its approvals and it's produced. Just in case.
Copy that.
Yeah. And then on the, I'll just make, before we go on to the trails subcommittee, I'll just make my staff or my member report before that. Because the only thing I have to add on all that is that I did ask the board last week for the money that was needed for that next phase of the trails, and they did approve an expenditure not to exceed $5,000 for Hardy to contact the real estate professional and get the easement things sorted out. So on behalf of trails, that's been done. Is there anything else? I know Lee just actually left, but is there anything else on trails from you, Kat? Okay, all right. And I guess the fact that Lee left might suggest that he's that there's nothing there. Stacey?
I have a question for that ad hoc. I'm just curious if what has changed on summer project work for these projects, and just curious how that's playing out with volunteers or staff and new policies and procedures on how the work gets done. If you could just shine a light onto any of that, or is that just truly sitting at the Truckee Trails organization level?
Kat, any thought on that?
I'm not sure if Kat wants to answer, or I can answer, whatever.
We can't hear you, Kat, if you're talking.
Oh, go ahead, Hardy.
The phase 2 of the Trails Master Plan has been complete, so we don't we're not actively, we don't have Truckee Trails under contract. Interestingly, Allison Pedley we've been literally playing phone tag for like 4 days trying to get in touch with each other. But what has changed at the Trails Foundation is they got a big grant to do trailshead maintenance. So they're engaged at a kind of a different level. They're hiring staff, their organization's growing. That's good. That's good for us. They have more horsepower. I did bust that plan out and I went over it with our consultant. And so I sent a professional services agreement and I'm trying to finish the retainer agreement for the real estate professional to start work on that easement. So I've been engaged on that in the last couple of days. Beyond that, there's really nothing else from the trails perspective that is currently going. I'll probably have more of an update for you in the July ACAT meeting on that. And I did send a note to Stacy while we were here. If you want real estate guidance on your other project, we already have somebody under retainer for the airport. So if you're headed that direction, it should be really simple to send them that task order.
Okay, Lee, did you have anything to add on behalf of Trails Subcommittee?
Well, no, not really. My understanding that we're still waiting on the that little triangle of land to see where that goes, because that will be pivotal in this.
Right. So I don't know if you were gone, but the board approved funding for Hardy to move forward on that.
Excellent. Thank you.
So, okay. And I think that we've only got the 4 subcommittees active right now, right? So that covers all the subcommittees. So any other, we'll just go through I've already done my staff report. Lee, do you have a member report? Do you have anything to add on your behalf, Lee?
No, I'm good. Thank you. Thanks to everybody there for all your effort on all these various issues. Really appreciate it.
And Kat, anything from you? Member report?
Nope.
And Joe, anything from you?
I just keep wondering if that's John Luke over Stacy's shoulder. Nothing to add.
And speaking of Stacy, anything from you?
No, I just love Captain Picard. Thanks, everybody. It's really good to see y'all.
And Lynn, anything from you?
Well, yes. I've spent the last month driving David absolutely nuts with all the changes and learning how to make homemade taco chips. That's it. That's all I got.
Fantastic.
All right. And anything from staff? Mark?
Nope, I'm good.
And
Oh, Jill's coming back.
Mark
Jill's
Lamb
coming back from maternity.
What's that?
Jill's coming back from maternity on the 15th of June. So
Oh.
Keely's going to part-time status shortly. So she's going to be a part-time member of our team. She's also working at Sierra Aero. If you want to find her, wander over there. She'll be at the front desk. And Jill's coming back. So we're excited to see Jill.
Okay. And Mark Covey, I didn't get from you. Are you good?
We're good. If you're at the airport, take the opportunity to go explore the new flight training / simulator room. That's it.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's worth noting. Yeah, go ahead, Lauren.
Red Truck opened up yesterday. So if you've been missing Red Truck, you can get some now. And most of the back office staff is still working from home because we want to keep office interaction like below 6 employees at a time in the back office, just because we don't have a lot of space really to separate everyone. So email is still the best way to get a hold of us. If you come in and stop by, you're probably not going to find anyone there.
Okay. And I think just also noting just for, I mean, maybe not for everybody, but the pilots that Jessica and Jeff Fay and their son Andy have moved to Texas. So we no longer have them at Sierra Aero, but they were they were super nice, great people. Jeff was an awesome mechanic, and presumably continues to be an awesome mechanic even in Texas. So I think we'll miss them, but I think
It's a hard time to move to Texas in the summertime.
Right, right. But I think we're still good. Sierra Arrow still, Max is there, and we're still in good hands with regard to maintenance on the field. It's just sad to see.
Could I move adjournment of this meeting because this isn't agenda stuff and I have to go.
Okay. I second it.
Can I? All right. All in favor?
Bye, y'all.
All right. Bye.
Hardy, you still there? Hardy Slee, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, listen, when you print that document, can you just maybe staple it together and leave it with Unicom, and then I can get it?
Yeah, I'll put your name on it. You bet, I'll put your name on it up there.
Really
And then real fast, sorry, Hardy or Mark, I know that there's been a change in kind of the 01 golf rate policy and also the simulator. Is that something we can agenda for the next ACAT meeting, or I can call you later kind of thing?
All right, Joe, say that one more time.
So I know that it sounds like the district is putting together kind of a 2-tier cost structure for 01 golf and the simulator. Is that something we can just do a kind of quick information at the next ACAT meeting, or I can just call you about it?
Yeah, please feel free to call me anytime with anything like that.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question. We didn't officially take a roll call vote on the meeting being adjourned because Lynn had to go. We still have a quorum. Can we take that roll call vote?
We don't have a quorum. You only have 3. I couldn't get in fast enough to say like we needed 4.
Curious that the
so
pilots are
Stacy's
still
gone
here.
too. Okay. All right.
Curious that the pilots are still here.
That is I will make note of that as well. And also that means that this ACAT meeting is in suspension for 30 days. So we're actually in a 30-day ACAT meeting right now. You guys ready?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll leave my Zoom on.
All right.
Okay.
So Lauren, what do we do?
I think it's a consensus vote. It's a consensus vote and it's done.
I mean, legally, like we lost a quorum, so the meeting ended, but we didn't have an official adjournment motion for the meeting.
Does it nullify anything we did in the meeting?
No, it's just.
We'll just note it in the minutes.
Yeah, I'll just note it in the minutes that we lost a quorum and the meeting ended at 11:02, but it wasn't like motioned to adjourn.
You can get the motion at the July meeting. That's why you started.
Yeah.
I think we actually got the motion. Lynn made the motion and I seconded it, and then they all left. Before
we didn't have a chance to like do the roll call for approval of the motion. So yeah, we had a first and a second, but it wasn't approved to end. I don't know.
Okay.
All right, guys.
All right.
Thank you
See y'all.
very much.
Bye.
Stay well.
Good job, David. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. See y'all.